Hello everyone, my name is John Cuervas-Mons and today I will fulfill one of my dreams. I'm talking about mobility as a service with the guy that defined the term itself and execute the first fully working experience in a city. He is a visionary and he created a very consistent concept with many different angles. From customer experience to politics, from a very innovative business models to a redefinition of the sustainable urban mobility. Yes, you are right. We are talking with Sampo Hietanen, the CEO and founder of MaaS Global, and I will dig as deep as I can about mobility as a service platforms. Hello, Sampo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Now you make me blush with all this, all these nice words. But yeah, I'm thankful for that.
Okay, so I will start with a very simple question. Where are you today and how did you go to work this morning?
Well, this will be an interesting one. You might see a bit of wet hair. I actually am doing a remote work way above the Arctic Circle in Lapland. And if you ask me how I came here, it's with cross-country skis.
Okay, yeah. That's interesting. I think it's the best response I had so far. So that's good. So to help our audience, I would like to define MaaS, like mobility as a service, just in a couple of sentences. And please correct me if I'm wrong or if you want to add more color to it. I will do myself, like starting with the need. So I believe that people, citizens in certain dense areas have a real need in understanding and choosing the right transport mode for their trip. And most of the times it's a multimodal trip that includes public transit, micromobility, taxi, or others. And they need to open like different apps and tickets in order to purchase that tickets. So the mobility as a service platform is an answer to that. It's an app that provides access to both public and private mobility services, allowing users to plan, book, and pay in a complete integrated experience. So what's your definition today? Because I think it's something that's changing with the time.
Yeah, I kind of like to take it from the dream perspective. People want dreams in mobility. People want freedom. That's the big dream. And what is it? And I, like you probably know, I have given over 2,000 speeches about mobility as a service. And I tend to ask people one thing. So what would be a bigger dream than owning a car? What would I have to promise that you would give up your car? And the answer, whether it's in Asia or US or Europe, anywhere, it's the same thing. And it is that, hey, if I could promise to you that you can go anywhere, anytime on a whim, then we're talking. I need to be able to promise that you can go to places you love. And that's where it all starts. And now what's the difference between MaaS and what we have today is that it goes without the car ownership. So can I do it without car ownership? Can I promise for a year ahead that you're covered for all those places? Because eventually, I mean, it is about combining everything. It is about taking one stress at a time from people. But if it doesn't compare, if it isn't as good in the minds of people as owning a car, we're not really disrupting in a big way. And I'm not saying this because there would be anything against cars. They're a beautiful product. But, you know, if you really want to do some big things, you go after the leading experience. And you have to admire the car, and only then can you actually go to the same level.
Yeah, I think that's completely connected with my second question, because the second question starts like the car is amazing. So the idea is to talk about customer experience, right? So it's true that if we analyze the car or the private car, like from sustainability or efficiency or economy, it's not very good, because in the end it's expensive. 50% of the trips you are doing with your private car are less than 5 kilometers. So that's not the perfect in efficiency levels. But if we talk about customer experience, so the car, it's really the king, because it covers like many needs, so it's always there. So every city is, not every city, but some cities are prepared for the car, so it's easier to do all the trips you need. So it's really convenient. So the question is how, because we know that for MaaS to succeed, we need to compete with that customer experience. So we need to create something that is better in that sense. So how can MaaS compete with the private car experience?
So let's take it first from the angle. I'm a transport engineer from my background.
Sampo Hietanen,
it's easy to take the angle that
MaaS Global,
it would be so much more efficient, so much more smarter, so much more rational if we would just do multimodal and use all of these and not two on our cars.
Hello, Sampo.
I mean,
welcome
take the
to the
example
show.
of Tokyo. In Tokyo, over half of the cars, and remember in Tokyo, you have to have a dedicated parking space before you can even buy a car. And that's expensive.
Okay, so I will start with a very simple question. Where are you today, and how did you go to work?
That's not the way to go about it. And if it was as transport engineers ruling the world, we never would have had single occupancy vehicles or private cars. We would have been much more efficient, but the world isn't rational. People are not rational. And here's where it comes to, okay, so what we have to do in the individual minds of people to be at the same level. And here's another question. So if I ask everywhere around the world, so which one of you have a car? And all the hands are up. And then I say, please close your eyes and try to come up with a package that would compare with it. And then I can ask a second question. And this is, I think, the most important one for this is, okay, how many of you out there have your dream car? We don't buy the cheapest Kia, but we also, not all of us can afford the Tesla Model X or Ferrari or Lamborghini. Well, almost everywhere in the room, there's only maybe one or less that have their dream car outside of Abu Dhabi, where all the hands were up. That's a different place. But here's when it comes to the value. Look, think of it this way. You're only using your car every now and then, maybe once or twice a week or something like that, but you have it there as your freedom insurance. If everything else fails, the car is there, and you want to have a bit of fun part of it. Look, if you're only using that much, it should be doable that instead of that mediocre car, when you drive with style. Come on. So what we do in WIM, always we start with, instead of giving you a car, we have a garage full of beautiful cars for you. So the more sustainable choices, this is the whole logic of MaaS in the business logic, and it's not often so understood. The business logic of making multimodal money is by using multimodal in it, which is that, okay, I will give you, instead of that mediocre car where you have all the risk, what if it breaks down, it's on you, what if this happens, what if you can't sell it afterwards, and so on. It's most of the risks are in you. You might have insurance, yes. With us is, pick a beautiful one, just use it and then leave it. It's someone else's, and pick another one next time. And if we can say that this is more valuable for people, then how does a MaaS operator, the service provider, actually make money then? Is by making sure that the production costs are lower. So this is the trick of it. And yeah, I'm revealing all the business secrets right now.
No, but I had that question too. So I was going to dig on that.
Yeah, it's all about being open nowadays, isn't it? So, but the trick of this is, look, we say that instead of your mediocre car, you're driving with a better one when you need it. But if you want to even upgrade it, every time you make a sustainable choice, you're actually saving money. So the more you walk, bike, use public transport, sustainable, but also it's for an operator who's taking care of all your trips, that's saving costs. Because, if you walk, we're not making much costs in there. So the more you are sustainable, the less the production costs for MaaS operator are, and the more we can reward you by getting you into that Tesla or whatever you dreamt of. And this is what I really love about the logic, because it's the only one out there that actually makes profits out of sustainable choices. But the only way of doing that is that you really decouple the price element. Like with the car, you start selling convenience, individuality, dreams, things that are emotional, and you sell them to people and worry about the production cost. And this is where it's good, because if it's only production costs, then public transit and all of these elements that are sustainable, they're something that a MaaS operator wants to push people into.
Yeah, I think that's
all for that.
that's the key, because in the end is the key of the business model also itself, because in the end the subscription model, it's the most interesting one because of that, because in the end you are nudging people to the public transport, to sustainable options, and after you are making money with the subscription. So I think that's the key issue that we need to find with subscriptions. It's true that it's difficult to arrive to that, but that's the key.
Here's where it's tricky in the discussions now in Europe and in the world of MaaS, is because, okay, let's also be honest, people are not going to drop their car keys immediately and just get rid of their cars. I can reveal a thing that we haven't shown so far, but we just got out of for our own customers. Actually, it was surprised that 24% of them have either skipped one car or avoided buying one. That's a lot, 24% already, and we're at really early stages. But we kind of are thinking about it from the perspective that because in the early days, you will do this kind of just trip at a time, pay-as-you-go type of model, not subscriptions. And people think of the whole MaaS as that would be the logic. But of course, over time, it will evolve more and more towards subscriptions. But now we tend to be judging the whole MaaS concept with early approaches that are like Netflix. First, you had a couple of videos sent to you per month. Then they had 6 hours of streaming, but then they move along to the all-inclusive. And exactly what happens in MaaS. So people make too many big kind of thoughts and big ideas about these early days that we're not even really there yet. And now we try to draw conclusions out of the whole concept.
Yeah, and the incentives are completely different. So once you go to subscriptions, like it's different because you are going to be you have a different approach as a business. So
the key is exactly to go to multimodal subscriptions. We have car subscriptions, we have public transport subscriptions, we have micromobility subscriptions, but none of them really have that driver of spinning the multimodal wheel. So the key to everything for business model, but also for sustainability goals or societal goals, is that we allow these multimodal bundles, packages, subscriptions to really pop up.
And how are you seeing right now at WIM the subscriptions? So it's a big percentage. You are seeing that people it's getting used to that and is starting to go to growing more. Or how you see these numbers?
Growing all the time and was going nicely. And of course, first you have to have substitute ideas in your head. People are not, remember that we're also disrupting an idea. If you go into an app store and try to find an app like ours where you can commit to 500 euros per month, it's a completely new thing. So you have to let people to wonder. Moving quite nicely from pay-as-you-go to low-end subscriptions, which is something close to what you have as a monthly public transportation, but we can have much more additions to it. And then on the same time, there's a big demand for business subscriptions, but also the car-like subscriptions, we're getting there, all the way up until March this year, when everybody stopped all commitments. Good to see, actually, whilst the subscriptions fell down, mostly, but we were able to recuperate the active users. This is what's strong in MaaS, that actually we're at all-time high of active users, because then they were looking into, okay, at least through WIM, they can have bikes, micromobility, short-term cars, and things like that to make sure that when they need to move, they're still covered, when they didn't dare to go to public transportation. And also that meant that many of them avoided then going into and buying a cheap and polluting car when they're really then out of the system for the rest of the services.
Okay, so and now moving to a different discussion that is related to the kind of platforms. So we see that we can find different kind of mobility marketplaces. So in my opinion, there are about 3 types that are going to be there. Like first we have like walled gardens, like Uber or these kind of companies that they will try to create their own multimodal mobility marketplace, but with their operators, their companies, and it's going to be more difficult for them to open to public transport. But they are trying in the US, they are doing, and they will find a way to do that, because it's let's say like the main value proposition of a mobility as a service platform. So in the end, they will move in that sense. I think that the second option will be like public-private platforms like WIM, like a platform? Because I don't know if you call WIM like a private-public, but HSL, the Transport Authority, is also part of that, right? So we can say that WIM is it's a public-private collaboration or something like that. And we will discuss later about that. And the third one is a completely public mobility as a service platforms, like city apps or these kind of apps that we will find. So you think that we are going to see all of them in our cities, or which one do you think is going to be more important?
Well, of course, I might be a bit biased, but knowing this and having done this way before, also founding the company, I'll kind of go them through one at a time. The walled garden approach that appears to be sort of what Uber does. They've been a bit here and there, so it seems every now and then, at least the appearance of open every now and then. But let's say that's the walled garden approach, that you control everything yourself. For the early parts of things, it can be quite beneficial for the end user because they can really control the whole UX. No need to partner because the ride hailing is your own. No need to partner because the micromobility is yours. The bikes are yours. The car shares are yours. Well, the public transport is not yours, but you can kind of add it nicely in there if they're willing and you push really hard. And it's kind of good to get started with. There's a couple of problems in that one. It can go then both ways in a walled garden approach. Let's say that one or two will be dominating everything. So let's say that Uber would be the only dominating player, maybe another one would come in. That means that they would be dominating in cities the access for people to different transportation services, which of course would be scary because eventually that leads into a position where they would be on top of urban planning as well. It would be a nice idea to think about, but of course, no cities will allow this. They will find a way to stop that kind of behavior. That's for sure. There's another bit of a problem in this one, which is that for anyone to try to do that, if this is capital intensive, even if you don't own the assets yourself, think of it when you have to own all the assets. And not even Uber will have enough money to actually go global with this kind of approach. They need others to distribute the whole idea of investments. So that's going to be hard. But let's say that there's a walled garden approach and it will not be one to rule them all. This is too big of a business. We kind of forget that mobility is 20% of household expenditure. So the businesses of even mobile telecom is only 10% of mobility. It will not be dominated by one. Just get over it. That's not going to happen. So the most likely scenario with the walled garden approach would be that there's maybe from 5 to 10 dominant players in the world, maybe up to 10 roughly. Now that means in a city, let's take Madrid, you would have 5 times the bike shares, 5 times the car shares, 5 times all of these in the same space. And the people could not cross-use them. So if you're in this platform, you cannot use these bikes. If you're in that platform, you can't use that. And then we have the public transport that everybody should be able to use. It gets a bit tricky and it's not really efficient and I would say beneficial for the end user. And that's kind of the problem of these walled garden approaches. Not to say it might actually function. Then we go into the other end, and this is where the public entity does the MaaS. That's where I see a couple of issues. Is it kind of assumes that we would be rational. It would be my dream as a transport engineer. I would get to maneuver. So who gets to do MaaS, and then I can maneuver. So what trips are you allowed to take, and what am I pushing, and how to do it? The problem of this has always been that, let's remember that the one that we're competing against are cars. What I love about my car is I choose my car, not the city, not the government, but someone else.
Also in the public option, I think that execution is a big issue. So it's very difficult for them to execute a project of this complexity. So you need to integrate many different stakeholders. You need to have a single vision. You need to think in the long term. You cannot think in the short term approach that I need a platform for the next year and that's it. So I think that's difficult also.
And then there's the service provider. I mean, let's face it. you are combining private and public run services, and whether you want it or not, the MaaS operator is the service provider, and you can't avoid it. And how can a public monopoly become a service provider on top of privately run companies' services? And it gets too tricky. Whilst I understand it from the perspective of city engineer and these, that it sounds perfect, that I could maneuver all of this, there's the execution issue. There's the issue of then also what people want. People of Tokyo or Madrid probably do not have their cars because of the city. They have to get out of the city. And if MaaS is only combined to a city, people will still buy their cars because they say, okay, well, yeah, nice, but when I need to get out of the city, I'll need a car anyway. So if it doesn't grow that way, and also then for the development, it's going to be hard to really keep up with the big IT development costs city by city. So it's an unlikely scenario. I understand that they want to pilot, but sometimes they're slowing then the actual movement. And this is for me not to say that the ones that should be on top of these markets should be the cities and governments. This is kind of a second chance for cities to get back to
they need to own the vision. That's the key, right? To own where we are going.
In a way, I use the term that, look, a long time ago, there were a lot of fruit stands coming to the city, from farmers coming in, and it was a great idea. People didn't have to go there; they came in. But then all kind of fruit stands were coming around everywhere in the city, and then somebody in the city came up, hey, how about we have a marketplace? It's good for the businesses. It's good for people that they know where they are, but it's also good for city. We don't have to have fruit stands here and there lying around, and it's the same situation. Then for the I would call the open market approach, which is we're not actually a public-private. We are a privately run company, and we do this, but we don't think that we're going to be the only ones. We need to partner up with everything, and we need to be really good for the consumers, but with an understanding that this has to also drive our partners, and city is one of those partners, their goals as well. And I think probably Antwerp is the best place at the moment for these types of markets, where we have multitude of aggregators like us using the same resources, same taxis, same public transport, same bikes, same micromobility as our competitors. So it's an end-to-end relationship, and that it's harder to get started, but it's the only way I see that this functions both for society and for the end user.
Okay, so WIM is fully owned by MaaS Global, right? So it's not part of the trust, because I had that question in mind that I didn't know, because I guess that is really difficult in terms of, well, I'm seeing in my own experience, so that it's difficult to manage a partnership with like transport authorities, for example. And it's difficult to tell them that the platform you are going to build is fully owned by a private company. So I was thinking that maybe there was something there around WIM.
But the idea is, how I tend to say to the cities is that MaaS is a great thing. Make the game rules. If you want to give the money, don't pick the winner. And we've even said it. I mean, even in many of the cities where they said that should we somehow tender and pick you, and said, no, don't do it. Because what people deserve is choices. We can't, and this would happen if we would go that way, that somehow Helsinki or some other city would choose us. Then it means that another city chooses another one. So let's say WIM is the provider of MaaS in Madrid, and then there's a Service X that is the provider in Barcelona. And now the problem of this is that the people in Madrid will not get the access to Barcelona, and this is stupid. So it's much better that we just say, look, we're not dreaming of being the only one in the city. It's like in Antwerp. If you want to put money into the market and kind of incentivize this, give it to the users and let us fight for it.
Yeah, that's the key. So going a little bit back in time. So I'm really interested because WIM is the first like full MaaS implementation. It's an inspiration for many companies like ours, like operators, local governments. And I'm interested in understanding how it all started. Like how how MaaS Global started. What was the approach first? When you decide to move from your previous work at ITS, or I think you were to move to create a new company, because at the beginning it's not an easy decision to make, and how this was like from the beginning.
So
many questions in the same question.
Where I've tracked, so where the first MaaS, when did I first time introduce it? It was 2006. I was a civil engineer. I had just in turn of the millennia, I had been responsible doing the world's first SMS-based route information services that gave you SMS between two cities, and it gave all the road weather information and congestions and everything there. I've been always in the digital part of it. I was coming back from London on a plane and had too many champagnes, and I had to have a speech for a lot of engineers next morning about how will digitalization, how will technology disrupt our beloved transport industry. And maybe because of too much wine, so I started comparing that, okay, what if a similar change than what happened in telecom from the 80s would happen in transportation? Because none of us had mobile operators in the 80s. It was just phones that were plugged together. It wasn't really a sexy business at all. It was kind of boring until this kind of new inventions came along, and started comparing that, okay, what if similar things were to happen here? And it got me quite excited that, okay, the only part that is lacking is actually the operator part, but it's more likely that people will start consuming this as packages. So fast forwarding, actually already early 2010, 11, somewhere like that, the MaaS as concept started to be at the heart of Finnish transport policy, where the whole ecosystem for getting into MaaS started is through this ITS Finland. I took up that job, gave up a CEO position in a company 2011, and there had been quite a lot of bits and pieces in Finland for creating this digitalization. What will it mean? And over weekly beers with a lot of industry, academia, and even public side people, we started ideating every week over afternoons that what could this really mean? And it had been. We're lucky in Finland that the transport ministry here is a ministry of transport and communication. So actually the same guys that created the business rules for GSM are taking care of transport. And it took them 5 minutes to understand, hey, we understand what's going to happen. Let's do these and these and these things. So the backing from the ministry had been, and the vision has been, and much of the vision has been created there. And it's been a joint effort ever since that. 2014, the whole boom started to be also global, that okay, this MaaS is really something, it's exciting, everybody wanted to enable it. And when I were giving speeches, everybody was, yes, definitely we want to enable this. Then I was asking, so guys, anybody that actually want to do it? And that's when everybody was trying to look at Sealing or others and say, well, could you please take the risk? And eventually just decided it wasn't me, but with the kind of group of weird people in pubs that was the ITS Finland society that said, okay, why don't we see if people really want to form a MaaS operator for real? And December 2014, we just made an open call for anyone in the world that, okay, who wants to come in and start building the world's first MaaS operator? And surprise, surprise, it was a really crowded bunch of people. And we started making a collaborative way of making a business plan out of it. By 2015, it showed that, wow, this is actually doable. This could really work as a business as well. And I remember it was a big chief from Transdev, the public transport giant, that called me in summer. And Jan said that, look, Sampo, this is now an R&D project, but that's not the way this is going to go. So let's make it into a company. If you hop and you lead it, we'll start financing it. And I had promised actually at home, because I had been running startups before, and I promised my wife that I'll kids and never do it again. But but it was pretty hard being sort of the guy who's been pushing this concept of MaaS, and at this point, of course, to say no. So then we went on. And by 2016, there was enough money to say that, okay, this is a foolish dream of seeing, is it doable to really put everything together? Let's go for it. And yeah, that's the route we're on still.
Interesting. And in terms of investments and the investments that you decided that were very interested for MaaS Global, I think I read a post in your blog like explaining why let's say industrial investors are important, why companies that are related to the business and not only financial investors but people that is, or companies that are part of the value chain are more interesting to the startup, right? That's your approach so far.
Yeah, it was a bit of a different approach, but the logic was simple. We knew that the MaaS ecosystem is tough. I mean, this is a huge ecosystem where everyone is big, and somebody might even say it's not an ecosystem, it's an ecosystem. But we thought it that way, that look, it's a tough one on its own, and definitely we don't get it. There's a lot of different angles coming into this. So it's better to take all of those as close as possible. So we wanted the best of public transport, and Transdev was there. We wanted the best out of car industry and got Toyota there, British Petroleum, Mitsubishi, and so on and so on. Karsan from Turkey to understand also that part of the OEMs, and Denso and many of them, to really get not just money, but also the understanding. But there's a second reason. MaaS is a completely new concept. For VCs, this is a concept that has no KPIs yet. So for the ones that actually understand the industry, it's easier for them to finance and because they want to get their heads around this as well. Soon we start to be as a MaaS industry at a point where VC type of money is coming in because we've proven a lot of metrics. But it's an extremely big, heavy lifting even to get the first parts done. Because let's remember, for the user, we have to be the Uber, we have to be Drive Now, we have to be Sixt, we have to be public transit, trains, we have to be bike shares, whether they're free floating or not, and all of this put into one. So the machinery is not light.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is the long-term approach. Because if you have like some strategic investors, it's easier that they are seeing that vision in the long term. With a VC, it's true that sometimes you need to have like some specific short-term KPIs. You need to. So in that sense, I guess it's
creating a completely new product category, and we're building it not so that the hardest part of this, that we're not independent in our product creation. We need partners. We have nothing if we don't have partners, and this is the one that takes time.
Yeah, that's true. I have the next question. Is I'm very interested in the details. Like that I'm asking these questions directly from the trenches. So I'm doing myself. I'm the CEO of Wondo, which is a company that we are doing a mobility service platform in Madrid. And what I think it's probably the most difficult task is to convince stakeholders and create a single vision where politicians, local public transport operators, investors, private mobility services, all feel comfortable and they believe in a single product, which is something not easy to do. And I want to use a specific thing that I think it happened to WIM, to illustrate this point. So I know that when WIM was launched in 2018, the only public transport ticket you had, it was the single ticket. So because the Public Transport Authority, HSL in this case, only allowed WIM to do that. So, but there was another ticket, which is the seasonal ticket, subsidized in a higher percentage. It's the one that you buy annually or monthly. So we have exactly the same issue here. So we have the single ticket right now of the buses in Madrid, but we don't have access to the subsidized ticket. So I want to hear from you, how you achieved that change, because I was reading that there was a law from the Finland government, just at the precise time. I was I don't know if you were involved in that decision or influencing the right people to do that, but how you achieve that, because that's an amazing step forward, that once you achieve to have like the seasonal ticket.
This is exactly true, and this is the hard part of this, because if you only have these, and fair to say, we lost a lot of money making seasonal tickets out of single tickets, and you can't make that affordable. And kind of, if you want, MaaS is not about individual trips or things like that. It is about your daily travel, because the car is about your daily travel. And if you don't have the subsidized version out of it, then you're just bound to do trips here and there, and it's hard to make that ever into a sustainable business. And that's the hard part of it. The Finnish law has been on from 1st of January 2018. And this is coming, not so much me influencing or anything, but the ministry and also the governments that have understood that, look, this is a similar situation than what happened with the GSM and such, that you have these necessities that are needed for building these aggregated services like MaaS. And if the gatekeepers do not open those gates, this market will never be born. So they made an obligation that anyone who offers any transportation services will have to have a digital API for accessing that, but also to payment, so that we can really aggregate it. Implementation has been, to be honest, quite a bit slow. Antwerp has been fastest in actually getting it through, but the law is in place, and that kind of helped us getting into the subscription. Having said that, the cities that own actually HSL, they've been also saying that, look, we want other sources, we want these MaaS offerings to happen, which means that everything needs to be in place for these MaaS operators, not just us, but many others as well. So it's how should I say it? It takes time. What I've been saying in this is that the key element of this is really on the regulation, on the market rules, so that they are fair, so that they actually make sense then to invest into this MaaS business. But that means that all the components need to be available. Otherwise, you just simply cannot build it, and that's just how it is. And because this is not, the MaaS is not so much for irregular visitors. You can't build a daily travel business for such. You kind of need the subsidized ticket, the monthly ticket in it, because otherwise you don't have a basis. How to convince those different players?
Yeah. Any recommendation?
I often say that the biggest part of this is the data is not the oil of this modern era. It's actually trust, but trust is sometimes hard when some of the players have the complete power. Sometimes trust is also being honest and saying, guys, this doesn't work. If this isn't happening, then this will die. We cannot make it happen. And my best advice always is that, look, a lot of round tables, a lot of really open, honest discussion about, guys, if it's not happening, then then we can forget about this, and going through. It takes time. We had to really sacrifice quite a lot of money into showing that, okay, it's doable, and then getting it on. But I'm quoting a big American VC that look, tech disruptions that one company or even companies can do, they're done. There's no longer anything out there. What is needed now for these new disruptions is political leadership.
No, I think that's the issue here. It's like we need a regulator to own what we are doing. They need to understand what we are doing, and they need to think that they need to establish the foundations to happen. And they are not playing that role yet. So we need to. I think Europe is starting to work in a similar regulation of the one that we talked about, like from Finland. And I guess that the things are moving in that direction. But it's true that we need that to happen fast, and to have a clear role from the regulation? Because right now they know that they need to play a role, but they don't know exactly what is that role.
But I do have one advice. Any change needs open discussion. This is political world, so we need to dare to be also public and have this discussion open. And I quote one of our ministers who said, "How did you get these laws through?" It always starts, this never would have become a concept had I not done one slide. And that slide was a user case of showing this is, once we're done, this is what the users can expect. These kinds of packages they can buy. And it was that one slide. I actually used 5 minutes to make it at one point because I got so bored of being the engineer with all kinds of things, and just put a more like an ad in there that this package, this price you can expect once we're done. And like the minister said, this is easier politically to go through because the user case, the user vision is so clear. You can always go back to that and say, look, guys, do we want these services or do we not? And then it's easier to roll, because we all understand that we cannot have this happen anymore. 25% of CO2 emissions in Europe are caused by transport. By 2030, they will be 40%. Now we have two ways. Either we start restricting and banning people from doing what they want. I wouldn't like that. At the same time, this is what bugs me. We have a concept that people like. We made a study in Europe, 38% of people with cars, they're waiting for a solution like this. 70 million cars in EU are waiting to be replaced. We have something that people want. And at the same time, we're thinking of restricting everything and banning these things. And we would have a solution that doesn't need government money, doesn't need restrictions. All we have to do is open up the assets that are publicly owned already. Come on, this couldn't be that hard.
And if you have the opportunity now to go back to 2017 and start WIM again, is there anything you will do differently?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds of things. But maybe the one thing I have to say is in the midst of doing the tech and doing all of that, we didn't keep enough discussion ongoing with the cities that we're actually working with the partners that we're working with. And this is crucial. Even if you would have difference of opinion and everything, but I would have spent more resource, time and effort really discussing, going through with the partners. When you're in a startup, you're kind of focused in getting your things done and focused on the end users, and we missed out on a lot of good conversations we should have had back then.
And about the future, what is the next step that you are going to follow MaaS Global? What are the next cities? What is your plan to scale to other countries and cities?
Well, of course, COVID slowed many things down. Looks to me that the next places of good markets, Belgium, like I said, Antwerp is a really great marketplace. The climate there is really good for these kinds of open market approaches. The other one seems to be that in Switzerland, and then also what we're doing is taking the whole thing to a next level. Because of course, being the guy who's kind of propeller and above my head, need to think what's the next step. And the biggest thing that really thrills me at the moment is what we're doing in Japan, partly also in Finland, but they're with the real estate developer. Because if the demand of how people consume their mobility is changing, definitely the way we build our cities, real estate will have to change as well. Which means that if we could succeed in giving people the certainty that they don't need that parking space, we would have so much more to do. And we have the first customers there now in Tokyo that combine your rent with your mobility. And that is exciting.
Okay, so I have here, I would like to close out with a couple of questions more related to your personal motivations, skills. So it seems that you master at least two important skills. So one, it's the visionary part that I think that one of your successes, or one of the most important part in terms of the concept of MaaS, is how you approach the concept from different perspectives. So because there is always people that is talking about MaaS platforms, but talking about the engineering part, or talking about only sustainability, or talking only about. And I think that one of the most important things in your case is that you approach in many different levels. So you are talking about people, you are talking about users, you are talking about engineers or systems on the other side, about sustainability, about business models. And I think that's the key in terms of the concept. And the second skill I think it's really important is the ability to influence or to persuade. And I'm very interested about this. So how did you learn that?
Oh, the third part must be also luck.
But luck is always involved. But you need to do something to increase the probability of luck. That's
luck and persistence. So to the last question of have I learned skills of persuasion? Not really. I'm a civil engineer from background, so that doesn't give you the skills of.
There was something there.
But I don't mind talking, and I don't mind doing that. But I suppose someone said it nicely once, that I can be really persuasive when I really, really believe it in myself, and then it's easier to do. If I would have any doubts that somehow then it would be much harder. And when you can be honest, people kind of get behind you easier. That's how I've seen it. But in all honesty, I am completely and utterly surprised. I mean, a small engineer coming from the very end of the world in a small place like Finland comes up with an idea of MaaS, and now it seems that it's on everybody's lips, and we have so many doctorates about this, and big companies and government projects and government policies around this MaaS. It just blows my mind. How is it doable? Because trust me when I say that there was never an evil conspiracy. There was never a big lobbying efforts or anything, and this is really kind of makes me want to believe in the world again. That this is only running on people getting excited. And amazing to see that so many big things already have happened by just people getting excited. There's one thing that I often forget, but I made a conscious decision a long time ago that I'm happy being called the father of this, but I don't try to say that, look, it's my definition or no definition. It doesn't have to be. This is not an invention. So it's not something that I need to hold on and say, oh, it's my MaaS or anything like that. And I'm not even trying to claim it, because there's been hundreds or even thousands that have contributed to this. So it's not like it's my invention. It's people, a lot of, like I said, the whole thing started from people talking in pubs and just getting excited about, okay, could this really work? Could this happen? And really trying to avoid making it so that it's about me.
This is the perfect point to wrap up. So I really appreciate your sharing your time, all the things that you explained, the story, everything. I think it's really important for understanding how this concept started and what are the key problems, because in the end there are many issues that we need to overcome in this concept. So thank you, Sampo, once again for sharing your ideas and thoughts, and I hope you have enjoyed our conversation as much as I did.
Oh, I have. Thanks.